The massive space station grew larger on the view screen as Captain Jake Morrison watched from his command chair. Kepler Station was huge, bigger than most cities back on Earth. It spun slowly in orbit around the gas giant Nephthys, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark metal hull. "Request docking permission," Morrison told his communications officer. Amy Thompson pressed buttons on her console. "Kepler Station, this is the human vessel Starbound requesting docking clearance." The reply came back quickly, but something in the alien voice sounded off. "Starbound, you are cleared for docking Bay 7. Welcome to Kepler Station." Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her science station. She had been studying the readings from the station for the past hour. "Captain, something feels wrong about this place." Morrison turned to look at her. Lisa was one of the smartest people he knew. If she felt something was wrong, he paid attention. "What do you mean?" "I cannot explain it exactly," Lisa said, frowning at her screens. "The station looks normal. All the systems are working. But something just feels off." Security Chief Carlos Rivera walked over to them. He was a big man with dark hair and serious eyes. "I feel it too, Captain. Been feeling it since we dropped out of warp. Makes my skin crawl." Engineer Pete Collins called out from his station. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings." "The station's power grid is only running at 60%. That does not make sense for a station this size." Morrison stood up and walked to the main view screen. Kepler Station was one of the biggest trading posts in this part of the galaxy. 17 different alien species came here to buy and sell goods. It should be busy and full of life. But as he looked at it, something felt wrong to him too. "Amy, scan the local traffic," Morrison said. Amy worked at her console for a few minutes. "Captain, this is odd. I am only picking up about half the ship traffic I would expect. And I am not seeing any Vorthak crystal ships or Hydrani water vessels. They are usually all over this station." The Starbound docked at Bay 7 without any problems. The docking process was smooth and normal. But as soon as the airlock connected, Morrison felt that strange feeling get stronger. It was like walking into a house where someone had died but you did not know about it yet. Station Commander Zethka met them at the airlock. He was a tall Saurian with green scales and yellow eyes. Morrison had dealt with Saurians before. They were usually friendly and talkative, but Zethka seemed nervous and kept his answers short. "Welcome to Kepler Station," Zethka said. His voice was flat and tired. "Your docking fees have been processed. Enjoy your stay." "Commander," Morrison said, "we noticed the station seems quieter than usual. Is everything all right?" Zethka's yellow eyes shifted back and forth. "Everything is normal. Some minor technical issues, but nothing serious. If you need anything, contact station operations." The Saurian commander walked away quickly, leaving Morrison and his crew standing in the docking bay. Lisa shook her head. That was not normal behavior for a Saurian. They loved to talk about their station and show off to visitors. The crew walked through the station corridors toward the main trading area. The hallways were well lit and clean, but they felt empty. They passed other beings from different species, but everyone seemed to be walking with their heads down. No one was talking much. In the main trading area, Morrison saw what Amy meant about the missing traffic. The huge space that should have been packed with traders and shoppers was only half full. The crystal display areas where the Vorthak usually sold their energy crystals were empty. The water gardens where the Hydrani traded their sea medicines were dry. Pete pulled out his scanner and took readings. "Captain, look at this. These areas have not just been abandoned. They have been sealed off completely. No air, no power, nothing." Carlos looked around at the other traders. Everyone here looks scared, but they are trying to hide it. Lisa walked over to a group of Zenthari traders. The Zenthari were known for being very logical and smart. They solved problems with math and science. Lisa came back after talking to them. The Zenthari say they have been having trouble sleeping, Lisa reported. They think it is because of problems with the air recycling system. But their scans show the air is fine. Amy had been listening to the station's communication channels on her portable unit. "Captain, I am picking up a lot of chatter in different alien languages. Most of it is about feeling uncomfortable or worried, but no one can say why." Morrison found a quiet corner where his crew could talk privately. "All right, everyone. What do you think is going on here?" "Something is definitely wrong," Carlos said. "Every instinct I have is telling me to get back on the ship and leave." Pete nodded. "The technical problems do not add up. A station this advanced does not just lose 40% of its power for no reason. The missing species bother me the most, Amy said. The Vorthak and Hydrani are not just gone. Their trading areas have been completely shut down. Lisa looked at her scanner readings again. What worries me is that every other species here is trying to explain away what they are feeling. The Xanthari think it is air problems. The Kethmoran think it is their hormone cycles. But they are all feeling the same thing we are. Morrison thought about this. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy for being too emotional and paranoid. Other species often made fun of humans for worrying about things that turned out to be nothing. But right now, that human tendency to worry might be important. The difference is, Morrison said, we are not trying to explain it away. We are treating it like real information. A station announcement echoed through the trading area. Attention all visitors. Sections 12 through 18 are closed for routine maintenance. Do not attempt to enter these areas, Carlos frowned. That is a lot of sections for routine maintenance. Let me guess, Pete said, checking his map of the station. Those are the same sections that have no power. Amy's communication unit started beeping. Captain, I am getting a message from another human ship. The Pioneer's Dream was supposed to dock here 3 days ago, but they never showed up. Morrison felt the wrongness in his gut get stronger. Every human instinct he had was screaming that something bad was happening on this station. The smart thing would be to listen to those instincts, but first, he needed to find out what was really going on. Dr. Lisa Park spent the next day walking around Kepler Station, talking to different alien species about how they were feeling. She wanted to understand what was happening to everyone. The Xanthari traders told her they were having trouble focusing on their work. These were beings who could do complex math in their heads, but now they kept making simple mistakes. They blamed it on the station's lighting being slightly off. The Kethmoran diplomats said they were feeling unusually emotional. This was strange because Kethmoran were known for controlling their feelings very well. They decided it must be because their sleep cycles were disrupted by the station's artificial day and night. The Saurian merchants complained about feeling restless and wanting to leave the station early. They thought it was because the station's temperature was a few degrees too warm for their comfort. Every species had a logical explanation for why they felt uncomfortable. But Lisa noticed something important. They were all feeling the same basic thing: fear, unease, and a desire to leave. They just could not admit it. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ben Carter was studying the station's computer records in their guest quarters. He was the ship's tactical officer, and he was good at finding patterns that others missed. Captain, Ben said, looking up from his portable computer, I have been tracking the missing trade routes. Every species that stopped coming to Kepler Station has territories along the outer edge of the galaxy. Morrison looked at the star map Ben had created. Show me. Ben pointed to different colored areas on the map. The Vorthak territories are here, near the Void Nebula. The Hydrani colonies are here, close to the dark matter fields. All of these areas were marked as safe just 2 months ago. What changed? Morrison asked. That is the problem, Ben said. Nothing official changed. No reports of attacks, no distress signals, no warnings. These species just stopped coming to trade. Amy walked into the room looking worried. Captain, I finally got through to Captain Ross Edwards on the Pioneer's Dream. You need to hear what he told me. She activated her communication device, and a recorded message started playing. Captain Edwards' voice sounded shaky and tired. Jake, I do not know how to explain this. My crew and I were 3 hours away from Kepler Station when we all started feeling sick. Not physically sick, but mentally sick. Like something terrible was waiting for us there. We tried to push through it, but the feeling got so bad that my engineer started having panic attacks. We had to turn around and dock at New Geneva instead. Morrison looked at his crew. Edwards has been trading in space for 20 years. He is not the type to run away from a feeling. Carlos had spent the day observing the station's security. He came back with troubling news. Captain, I watched the security patterns for 8 hours. The guards are avoiding certain sections of the station completely. When I asked about it, they said those areas were off limits for maintenance. The same sections that have no power? Pete asked. The exact same ones, Carlos confirmed. And I saw something else. Some of the alien crew members who work on the station have been leaving early. The station manager told me they were taking personal leave. But I counted at least 50 workers who just never came back to their shifts. Pete had been trying to get permission to inspect the station's power systems. I finally got clearance to look at their main power grid. Captain, this is not a maintenance issue. Someone deliberately shut down power to those sections. And the way they did it, They wanted to make sure nothing could survive in those areas. No air, no heat, no gravity. Lisa returned from her research with more disturbing information. I spoke with a Xanthari scientist who has been studying the psychological effects on the station population. She does not realize what she found, but her data shows that every species here is producing stress chemicals at levels that should cause panic, but they are not panicking. What does that mean? Morrison asked. It means something is suppressing their natural fear responses, Lisa explained. Their bodies know there is danger, but their minds cannot process it properly. They are making up rational explanations instead of listening to their instincts. Amy had been monitoring all communications coming into and leaving the station. Captain, I am picking up fragments of messages from other stations. At least 6 other major trading posts are reporting similar problems. Decreased traffic, missing species, and what they are calling minor psychological effects on the population. Morrison called his crew together for a private meeting in their quarters. The feeling of wrongness had been getting stronger all day, and now he understood why. We are the only ones who are treating this like a real threat, Morrison said. Every other species is trying to rationalize what they are feeling. They are looking for scientific explanations instead of trusting their gut instincts. Carlos nodded. In my security training, they taught us that the first rule of survival is to trust your instincts. If something feels dangerous, treat it as dangerous until you prove it is not. But that is exactly what other species think is wrong with humans, Lisa said. They say we are too paranoid, too quick to assume the worst. Maybe that is not a weakness, Ben suggested. Maybe that is exactly what we need right now. Morrison made a decision. Amy, try to contact every human ship in this system. I want to know if they are experiencing the same feelings we are. Over the next few hours, Amy reached out to 12 human vessels in the area. Every single captain reported the same thing. A strong feeling that something was wrong with Kepler Station and the surrounding space. 3 ships had already left the system without completing their business. 2 more were preparing to leave, but the alien ships continued their normal operations. They filed complaints about minor discomforts, but they stayed and continued trading. That evening, Morrison tried to request a meeting with the station's leadership council. He wanted to share his concerns and suggest an investigation. But his request was bounced between different departments. No one wanted to take responsibility for investigating what they considered to be minor operational issues. Station Commander Zethka finally agreed to a brief meeting, but he brought 2 other officials with him. A Xanthari administrator named Loktar and a Kethmaran security chief called Vexhai. Captain Morrison, Zethka said, I understand you have concerns about station operations. Commander, I believe there is a serious threat to this station that everyone is ignoring, Morrison said. The missing species, the sealed sections, the psychological effects on the population. These are not separate problems. They are connected. Loktar checked his datapad. Captain, our analysis shows all station systems are operating within acceptable parameters. The psychological effects you mention are minor variations in behavior that can be explained by routine stress factors. Vexhai added, the sealed sections are undergoing scheduled upgrades. The missing trade partners have simply found more profitable routes. There is no evidence of any threat. Morrison tried to explain the human perspective. Sometimes the most important threats are the ones you cannot measure with instruments. Sometimes you have to trust what you feel, even if you cannot prove it scientifically. The 3 alien officials looked at each other. Morrison could see they thought he was being typically human, emotional and irrational. Captain Morrison, Zethka said politely, we appreciate your concerns, but we cannot base station policy on feelings and hunches. We need evidence and data. After the meeting, Morrison returned to his crew with bad news. The station leadership was not going to investigate. They were going to continue operating as if nothing was wrong. So what do we do now? Amy asked. Morrison looked at his crew. We find out what is really happening in those sealed sections, even if we have to break a few rules to do it. Carlos Rivera studied the station's security patrol schedules for hours. He found a pattern in how the guards moved through the corridors. There was a 20-minute window when Section 15 would be completely empty of security personnel. This is our chance, Carlos told the team. But once we go in there, we are breaking station law. If we get caught, we could be arrested and banned from all Galactic Commerce Alliance stations. Morrison looked at his crew. Lisa, Pete, and Carlos were all ready to take the risk. Amy volunteered to stay behind and monitor communications, ready to warn them if security was coming. At exactly 0300 station time, the three humans made their way to Section 15. Carlos had disabled the access alarms, and Pete had rigged a device to loop the security camera feeds. To anyone watching, the corridors would look empty. The door to Section 15 opened with a quiet hiss. Immediately, Morrison felt the wrongness hit him like a physical force. It was so strong that he had to grab the doorframe to keep from stepping backward. "Do you feel that?" Lisa whispered. "Yeah," Pete said, his voice tight. "It is like walking into a nightmare." They put on their portable atmosphere suits and activated their helmet lights. The corridor beyond the door was completely dark. Their lights cut through the darkness, showing walls that looked normal except for one thing. They seemed to shimmer slightly, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Carlos scanned the walls with his security detector. "I am reading some kind of energy field, but it is not like anything in our databases." Lisa took out her scientific scanner and pointed it at the shimmering walls. What she saw made her gasp. "Guys, look at this. There is some kind of substance covering everything. It is so thin you can barely see it, but it is there." The substance looked almost like a film of oil on water, creating rainbow patterns when their lights hit it. But as they watched, the patterns seemed to move and shift, like the substance was alive. Pete aimed his engineering scanner at the floor. "This stuff is everywhere. Walls, ceiling, floor, and it is growing. I can see where it started near the air vents and spread outward." They walked deeper into the section following the main corridor. Every surface was covered with the strange substance. Their helmet lights reflected off it in weird ways, creating shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Lisa, what are your readings telling you?" Morrison asked quietly. Lisa was frowning at her scanner. "This is impossible. The substance shows up as partially organic, but it is also operating on quantum principles. It is like it exists in multiple dimensions at the same time." They reached what used to be a trading area. The shops were all empty, but the substance was thicker here. It hung in curtains from the ceiling and formed pools on the floor. In the center of the area, there was a large mass of the substance that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Carlos moved closer to examine the pulsing mass. "I think this might be some kind of central node or brain." Lisa aimed her scanner at the mass. "I am reading complex electromagnetic activity. This thing is definitely alive, and it is thinking." Pete was examining the walls near the node. "Captain, look at this. The substance is not just covering the surfaces. It is dissolving them and rebuilding them. It is changing the station itself." Morrison felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air in the section. How long would it take to spread through the entire station? At this rate, Pete calculated, maybe 6 months to cover everything. Lisa tried to take a small sample of the substance with a collection tool. The moment the tool touched it, something happened. A sound filled the air so low they felt it more than heard it. The sound went straight into their brains and made them feel sick and afraid. But Morrison noticed something strange. The sound made him feel more of that familiar wrongness, but it did not make him panic like it should have. Instead, it felt like a warning, like his instincts were being activated. "Did you guys feel that differently than you expected?" Morrison asked. Carlos nodded. "Yeah, it should have made me want to run away screaming. But instead, it just made me more alert." Lisa was staring at her scanner readings. "This is incredible. The sound is designed to cause panic in most galactic species, but human brain patterns are different. We process it as information instead of just fear." They heard Amy's voice through their communication devices. "Captain, you need to get out of there. I am detecting security patrols heading your way." As they made their way back to the entrance, Pete's scanner picked up more disturbing information. "Captain, this substance is not just in Section 15. I am reading traces of it throughout the station. It is in the air vents, the water systems, even the power conduits." They barely made it out before the security patrol arrived. Back in their quarters, they analyzed what they had discovered. "This is not some kind of accident or natural phenomenon," Lisa said. "This substance was designed. Someone or something created it for a specific purpose." Morrison asked the question they were all thinking. "What purpose?" Lisa pulled up her analysis on the room's display screen. "Based on the electromagnetic patterns and the way it interacted with us, I think it is some kind of scanning system. It is studying every living being it comes into contact with." "Studying them for what?" Carlos asked. "I do not know," Lisa admitted. But whatever it has been here long enough to study thousands of different beings from multiple species. Pete had been analyzing the station's power usage patterns. Captain, I think I know why the power is down in those sections. The substance feeds on electrical energy. The more it grows, the more power it needs. Amy had been monitoring communications during their investigation. I intercepted a message from Station Commander Zethka to someone off station. He was reporting that the containment procedure was still working and that the subjects were not showing signs of panic. Morrison looked at his crew. They know about this. The station leadership knows exactly what is happening and they are letting it continue. But why? Lisa asked. Carlos had a grim answer. Maybe because they do not have a choice. Maybe whatever is behind this is more powerful than they are. Morrison made a decision. We need more information. Amy, try to contact Commander Zethka directly. Tell him we know about the substance and we want to help. An hour later, Zethka agreed to meet them in a private conference room. When he arrived, Morrison could see the fear in the Saurian's yellow eyes. You should not have gone into that section, Zethka said. It is dangerous. Commander, Morrison said, we want to help, but we need to know what we are dealing with. Zethka was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The substance appeared 6 months ago. First here, then on 16 other major stations across the galaxy. We have tried everything to remove it, but nothing works. It just keeps growing. What does it want? Lisa asked. We do not know, Zethka admitted. But every species it encounters becomes calm and accepting. They stop asking questions. They stop feeling afraid. Everyone except humans. Morrison felt a cold understanding creep over him. That is why the Vorthak and Hydrani stopped coming here. They were affected first because their territories are on the outer rim where this thing came from. Zethka nodded slowly. The Galactic Commerce Alliance believes we can control the situation. They think if we can keep it contained, we can study it and find a solution. But you do not think so, Carlos said. No, Zethka said. I think we are being studied. And when the study is complete, something very bad is going to happen. Morrison looked at his crew. They had found the source of the wrongness they had been feeling. Now they needed to figure out what to do about it. Lisa worked through the night analyzing the data they had collected from the infected section. What she found made her hands shake as she typed her report. Captain, she said when Morrison arrived in the morning, I know what we are dealing with and it is worse than we thought. Morrison poured himself coffee and sat down. Tell me. The substance is not just studying the beings on this station, Lisa explained. It is a reconnaissance probe sent by something much larger. I found communication patterns in the quantum signatures. It is sending information somewhere else. Pete looked up from his engineering station. I traced those signals. They are going to a point in space about 50 light-years from here, in a system that our star charts say is empty. Amy had been monitoring galactic communications all night. Captain, I have been tracking news from other stations. The pattern is spreading. Stations go quiet for a few months. Then they start reporting that everything is normal and wonderful, but the species that used to trade there stop coming. It is like a slow-motion invasion, Carlos said. Whatever is behind this is taking over the galaxy one trading station at a time. Morrison studied the star map that Pete had created. The infected stations formed a rough circle around the empty system where the signals were being sent. It is working outward from a central point. That empty system is not empty. Something is there. Lisa pulled up her analysis of the substance's behavior. I think I understand why humans are not affected the same way. The substance works by suppressing natural fear and anxiety responses. It makes beings feel calm and safe when they should be terrified. But humans are naturally anxious and paranoid, Morrison said. Our brains are wired to look for threats even when everything seems fine. Exactly, Lisa said. Evolution made us that way because it kept us alive. Other species evolved to be more trusting and logical. That makes them vulnerable to this kind of attack. Ben had been studying the tactical implications. Captain, if this thing can suppress the threat responses of most galactic species, they will not be able to organize a defense even when they know what is happening. We need to warn everyone, Morrison said. Amy shook her head. I tried to send messages to other human ships, but the station is blocking our communications. They are only allowing routine trade messages. Carlos had a solution. What if we leave the station and send the warnings from outside their communication block? They will not let us leave, Morrison said. I already tried to file a departure request. Station control said there was a problem with our ship's systems and we needed to stay for repairs. Repairs we do not need, Pete confirmed. Our ship is fine. Morrison realized they were trapped. The station leadership was not going to let them leave with knowledge of what was happening. But he had an idea. Amy, can you patch into the station's main communication system? Not from here, Amy said. I would need physical access to the central communication hub, which is in Section 12, Carlos said, checking his map. Another sealed section. Lisa had been studying the substance's growth patterns. If the substance is in the communication systems, it might be controlling all messages going in and out of the station. That would explain why other species are not reporting the threat properly. Morrison made a decision. We are going to Section 12. But this time we are not sneaking in. We are going to ask for help. An hour later, Morrison, Lisa, and Carlos met with Station Commander Zethka again. This time Morrison did not hold back. Commander, this station and everyone on it is in immediate danger. That substance is not just studying you. It is preparing for an invasion. Zethka's yellow eyes were filled with fear. Captain, the Galactic Commerce Alliance has forbidden us from taking any action that might damage the substance. They want to study it. The Alliance leadership has been affected too, Morrison said. That is why they are making decisions that do not make sense. Lisa showed Zethka her analysis. Commander, look at these readings. The substance draws power from the neural activity of intelligent beings. The more beings present, the faster it grows. This station, with its massive population, is like a feeding ground. What are you asking me to do? Zethka said. Help us send a warning to every system in the galaxy, Morrison said. Before it is too late, Zethka was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. If I help you, I will be disobeying direct orders from the Alliance. I could be executed, Carlos leaned forward. Commander, if you do not help us, everyone in the galaxy could be enslaved or killed. Including your own species, Morrison added. Zethka made his decision. What do you need? Access to the central communication array, Amy said. And enough time to broadcast a message to every major system. Zethka stood up. I will give you 15 minutes. That is all I can do without other security officers noticing. They made their way to the central hub of the station. The communication array was a massive room filled with equipment that could send messages across thousands of light years instantly. But as soon as they entered, Morrison could see the substance was here too. It covered the walls and equipment like a thin skin. Amy went to work immediately, bypassing the station's normal communication protocols. I'm sending the message on all emergency frequencies. Every major system will receive it. Lisa was taking readings of the substance in the communication room. Captain, this is the most active concentration I have seen. The substance here is not just sending information out. It is receiving instructions. Pete was analyzing the incoming data streams. I am reading massive amounts of information being downloaded to something in that empty system. Star charts, species databases, military information, everything. It is mapping the entire galaxy, Morrison realized. Learning about every species, every world, every defense. Carlos was watching the room's entrance. Captain, we have company. Security forces are coming this way. Amy looked up from her work. Message sent. Every human ship within 50 light years should have it in the next 10 minutes. As they prepared to leave the communication room, Lisa made one last discovery. Captain, the substance is not just receiving instructions. It is receiving countdown signals. Countdown to what? Morrison asked. Lisa's face was pale as she read her scanner. I think countdown to invasion. Based on these signals, something big is coming, and it is coming soon. They barely escaped the communication room before station security arrived. Back in their quarters, they waited to see if their message had been received. Amy monitored the communication channels. Captain, I am picking up responses from human ships throughout the sector. They are all reporting the same feelings of wrongness that we experienced. What about non-human ships? Morrison asked. Nothing, Amy said. Either they are not receiving the messages or they are not responding. Ben had been analyzing the tactical situation. Captain, even if every human in the galaxy knows about the threat, we are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. How can we possibly fight something that can control the minds of most galactic species? Morrison looked at his crew. We cannot fight it with weapons or ships, but we can fight it with something the other species do not have. What is that? Lisa asked. Paranoia, Morrison said. The ability to trust our instincts even when everything seems fine. The willingness to act on gut feelings instead of waiting for proof. Amy's communication board lit up with incoming messages. Captain, human ships across the galaxy are reporting similar substances on other stations. And they are all asking the same question. What do we do now? Morrison thought about the countdown signals Lisa had detected. Something was coming, and it was coming fast. The galaxy's rational, logical species would not be able to defend themselves because their own minds had been turned against them. But humans, with all their fears and worries and illogical anxieties, might be the only hope the galaxy had left. Amy, send a message to every human ship, Morrison said. Tell them to trust their instincts, warn everyone who will listen, and prepare for war. The countdown that Lisa had detected reached 18 hours later. Morrison was in the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars, when space itself seemed to tear open. A massive dark shape emerged from what looked like a rip in reality. It was bigger than anything Morrison had ever seen, easily the size of a small moon. Captain Morrison, to all human vessels, Morrison spoke into his communicator. It is here. The dark ship did not look like it was built by any species Morrison knew. It seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting it, making it hard to see against the stars. But he could feel it in his mind, a cold presence that made every human instinct scream danger. All around the station, alien crew members and visitors stopped what they were doing and looked up at the viewports, but instead of fear, their faces showed calm acceptance. The substance had been preparing them for this moment. Amy's voice came through the communicator. Captain, I am getting reports from human ships across the galaxy. Similar vessels are appearing at every major trading station. This is a coordinated invasion. Lisa had set up her equipment in their quarters and was analyzing the readings from the massive ship. Captain, that vessel is not just a ship. It is alive, and it is scanning every mind on this station. Morrison felt the scanning process as a cold touch in his thoughts, but where other species seemed to welcome it, human minds fought back automatically. Their natural paranoia and anxiety created static that the scanning process could not penetrate clearly. Carlos came running into the observation deck. Captain, you need to see what is happening in the main trading area. They made their way quickly through the station corridors. What they found in the trading area made Morrison's blood run cold. All the non-human beings were standing in perfect rows, their eyes unfocused, their faces blank. They were not moving or speaking. They looked like they were waiting for something. They are being controlled, Lisa whispered. The substance has been mapping their brain patterns for months. Now that main ship can control them directly, but the humans on the station were different. They moved around frantically, trying to wake up the other species, shouting questions that no one answered. A few humans were trying to reach their ships, but the docking bays had been sealed. Commander Zethka appeared beside Morrison. Unlike the other Saurians, his eyes were still focused and aware. How are you not affected? Morrison asked. I have been taking a human anxiety medication, Zethka admitted. I thought it might help me understand your warnings better. I think it is protecting my mind from their control. Ben had been trying to reach the human ships docked at the station. Captain, all the docking clamps are locked. No one can leave. Amy was monitoring communications. Human ships throughout the galaxy are reporting the same thing. They are trapped at stations while the alien crew members stand around like zombies. Lisa was studying the readings from her scanner. The main ships are downloading something from every controlled mind. Memories, knowledge, cultural information, everything that makes each species unique. They are stealing their identities, Morrison realized. A low humming sound filled the station as the dark ship moved closer. Through the viewports, they could see smaller craft detaching from the main vessel and approaching the docking bays. They are coming aboard, Carlos said, checking his security scanner. Dozens of smaller ships. Morrison made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Amy, send an emergency broadcast to every human ship in the galaxy. Tell them to do whatever it takes to break free from the stations. Do not worry about laws or regulations. This is survival. Amy's fingers flew over her communication device. Message sent, Captain. But how can our ships fight something that controls most of the galaxy? The answer came from an unexpected source. Pete had been studying the station's power systems and found something interesting. Captain, the substance that covers everything needs constant energy to maintain its control over so many minds. If we could overload the station's power grid, it might disrupt their control long enough for people to wake up. How long would that take? Morrison asked. 5 minutes to rig the overload, Pete said. but it will destroy the station's power systems completely. Everyone will have to evacuate. Morrison looked around at the controlled alien beings standing in perfect rows. Do it. Pete ran toward the power control center with Carlos providing security. Lisa continued taking readings while Amy coordinated with human ships across the galaxy. The smaller alien craft had docked, and strange beings in dark suits were walking through the station corridors. They looked humanoid but moved wrong, like they were puppets being controlled by invisible strings. When the power overload began, everything changed at once. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. And suddenly the alien beings who had been standing like statues started blinking and looking around in confusion. What happened? A Zenthari trader asked, shaking his head. Where am I? Commander Zethka's voice echoed through the station's announcement system. This is an emergency evacuation order. All beings proceed to the nearest escape pods immediately. The station is under attack. The confusion only lasted a few minutes before the dark-suited beings reached the main trading area. But it was long enough for Morrison to see something that gave him hope. When the aliens woke up from their controlled state, the first thing they felt was the same wrongness that humans had been experiencing all along. Their natural fear responses, freed from the substance's suppression, immediately told them they were in terrible danger. A Saurian merchant grabbed Morrison's arm. Human, what is happening? I feel like something terrible is coming. Trust that feeling, Morrison told him. Run for the escape pods and do not look back. The evacuation was chaotic but effective. Thousands of beings from multiple species fled toward the escape pods, finally listening to the same instincts that had been trying to warn them for months. Amy had maintained contact with human ships throughout the galaxy. Captain, the power overloads are working. Human ships are reporting that alien crew members are waking up and helping with evacuations. But the victory was temporary. As the escape pods launched from Kepler Station, the massive dark ship turned its attention to them. Beams of strange energy reached out toward the fleeing pods. That was when Captain Ross Edwards and the Pioneer's Dream arrived. Morrison, you magnificent paranoid human. Edwards' voice came over the communication system. We brought friends. Looking out the viewport of their escape pod, Morrison saw the most beautiful sight of his life. Dozens of human ships had surrounded the dark vessel, firing everything they had at its hull. The human ships were smaller and less advanced than the alien invader, but they had one crucial advantage. They were crewed by beings whose minds could not be controlled or predicted. Lisa was still taking readings with her portable scanner. Captain, the human attacks are disrupting the alien ship's control signals. Look, throughout the escape pods, alien beings were staying awake and aware instead of falling back under the invader's influence. The chaotic, unpredictable nature of human anxiety and paranoia was creating interference that the aliens could not overcome. The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, the massive dark ship retreated back through the rip in space, taking most of its smaller craft with it. But it left something behind. A galaxy full of species who finally understood the value of human instincts. 6 months later, Morrison stood in the new headquarters of the Terran Early Warning Institute on Earth. Dr. Lisa Park was the director, and their job was to train humans to recognize and investigate the feelings that other species might dismiss. Amy walked into his office with a report. Captain, we have 15 new alerts from human crews who say something feels wrong about various locations. Command wants us to investigate all of them. Morrison smiled. For the first time in galactic history, when humans said something felt wrong, everyone listened. Because the galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the most important threats are not the ones you can see or measure. Sometimes survival depends on trusting the voice in your head that says something is not right, even when everything looks normal. And humans, with all their worries and fears and seemingly irrational anxieties, had become the galaxy's most important early warning system. The invasion had been stopped, but Morrison knew it was not over. The dark ships would return someday, probably with new strategies and better technology. But next time the galaxy would be ready, because next time everyone would be listening when humans said something felt wrong.